I wasn't supposed to be the one fixing her sink. I just wanted to drop off a package. It was a Friday, mid-May. One of those stubbornly gray afternoons where the sky can't decide if it wants to rain or not. I'd just gotten home from a brutal shift at the cafe, keys still in hand, when I saw her front door wide open and the sound of water. Not from a faucet. She was kneeling in her kitchen, sleeves pushed up, a silver wrench too big for her hands clutched like it might bite her. And even then, soaked in frustration and cold water, she looked graceful. "Need a hand?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My voice cracked. "Great." She glanced up. No smile. Just that tired, unreadable look she always wore. Like she was weighing what parts of herself to share with the world. "Jamie, right?" she said. "From next door." I nodded. She moved aside. "You any good with pipes?" "I'll pretend I am," I muttered, dropping my backpack. We didn't say much for the first 20 minutes. I lay on her cold kitchen tiles, flashlight in my mouth, half guessing what to tighten, what not to break. She made tea. I could smell it, chamomile and something floral, and for some reason, it made my chest ache. Her name's Eleanor. I knew that already. I knew more than I should have. I'd seen her around the building. Always in black, always alone, with the kind of presence that made people straighten up around her. Not intimidating, just still, controlled. She handed me a mug. I sat up, wiping my hands on my jeans. "This isn't part of the service," I joked, nodding at the tea. She smiled then, small but real. "Consider it a bribe." We sat at the kitchen table. The place was quiet. Too quiet, like it hadn't heard laughter in years. I tried not to stare at her hands wrapped around the cup. Tried not to notice how she tucked her hair behind her ear, again and again, like it wouldn't stay. "You live alone?" I asked, then immediately regretted it. She raised an eyebrow. "You ask all your neighbors that?" I opened my mouth, closed it. She didn't push, just sipped. Then, after a pause, "Divorced. A year ago." I nodded, unsure what to say. The silence was thick, not awkward, just full. Like something hovering between us neither of us knew how to name. "You're what, 23? She asked suddenly. 24, I said. "Next month." "God," she whispered, almost to herself. Then, quieter. "You make me feel young again." I didn't know what to do with that. She said it without flirting, without looking at me. Just said it, like it slipped past some wall inside her. And for some reason, that made it hit harder. My throat went dry. I looked at her, really looked, and in that moment she didn't look 40-something. She didn't look like anything tied to a number. Just a woman, sitting across from me, more real than anyone I'd known. I started, but nothing came out. Her fingers brushed mine as she stood to take my empty cup. Too long. Not an accident. She paused. Our eyes met. And then, a knock at the door. She didn't move. Neither did I. The knock faded, but the silence it left behind was louder somehow. She still wasn't looking at the door. Just at me. Like I was something fragile or maybe something she wasn't supposed to want. Her fingers hovered an inch from mine, still warm from where they touched. And in that space, the air shifted. I wasn't just some kid fixing a sink anymore. She turned away first, but not before I caught the flicker in her eyes. Regret? No. Something more dangerous, something like longing. "I wasn't expecting company," she said, voice flat again. "Probably a neighbor." I nodded, even though it wasn't really an answer. She didn't ask me to explain what I was still doing there. And I didn't bring it up either. The tea had gone cold. Her apartment smelled like old books and lavender. The kind of smell that stays in your clothes, lingers on your hands. I tried to memorize everything. The chipped mug she drank from, the loose thread on her cardigan, how her voice dropped slightly when she was thinking. She sat down across from me again. Slower this time, like her body was suddenly heavy. "I don't usually let people in," she said, then gave a short laugh that didn't reach her eyes. God, that sounds like a serial killer line. No, I said too quickly. It doesn't. I mean, it makes sense. People can be a lot. She watched me, really watched, like she was trying to decide if I understood something she wasn't saying aloud. After the divorce, she said, her fingers idly tracing the rim of her mug, I stopped talking to almost everyone. Friends picked sides. My parents still think I should have stayed. I think I forgot how to be around people who don't expect me to apologize. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't look away. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I saw her thumb press too hard into the porcelain, like she needed to ground herself. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, I said softly. She looked up. Something softened. That's the problem, she murmured. With you, I kind of want to. The room felt smaller then. Or maybe it was me that felt bigger, too big for the moment. Too full of things I didn't know how to say without ruining something. I kept noticing things I shouldn't. The pale skin at her collarbone, the way her hair curled at the ends, how the lines at the corner of her eyes made her seem more alive, not less. I wanted to tell her that, but I couldn't. Not when I wasn't even sure what this was. She stood again, slower this time. Walked past me. I thought maybe that was the end of it, that she was politely showing me the door. But then, I felt her hand, light and uncertain, touch my arm. Would you stay a little longer? She asked. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I didn't trust my voice, so I nodded. And she smiled just once, brief like it scared her to let it out. She brought out an old photo album. I didn't know why. Maybe she needed to fill the silence. Maybe it was her way of making space without asking me to leave. The cover was worn. The spine cracked like it had been opened and shut too many times. She placed it between us on the coffee table like it was something dangerous. You'll laugh, she said, settling beside me. Closer than before. Her knee brushed mine. I won't, I said, already lying. Inside were photos from the 90s, grainy, sunlit images of her with wild curls and bigger smiles. One showed her in a faded college sweatshirt, leaning against a car, beer in hand, laughing at someone off camera. She looked nothing like the woman next to me, or maybe she looked exactly like her. I used to be so loud, she said, fingers grazing the photo. I don't know what happened. You're not quiet, I said. You just listen more than most people. She turned her head toward me. There was something raw in her face, like she hadn't expected kindness to come from me. Not this kind. You don't know me, she whispered. I know how you take your tea, I said. I know you hum when you water your plants, and that you open the window when it rains, even when it's freezing. Her breath caught. I said too much. I looked down, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. My hand was half an inch from hers. I could feel the heat of her skin. I shifted back. Just a little. That's when her phone rang. She jumped. The sound was too loud in the quiet room. The screen lit up face down on the table, but she didn't move to answer. Your ex? I asked before I could stop myself. She shook her head. My mother. She thinks I'm at therapy. Silence again. Thicker this time. You shouldn't be here, she said suddenly, almost too fast. I know, but neither of us moved. She stared at the wall across from us. I stared at her profile, the way her jaw clenched like she was holding something back. Her hand gripped the edge of the album until her knuckles whitened. I used to think desire was something that burned out, she said, so quietly I almost missed it. But it doesn't. It just waits. My pulse picked up. I should have left. I knew that. I should have stood up, made a joke, changed the subject, anything. But all I could do was watch her, wondering what it would mean if I reached for her hand. My throat was dry. Her fingers, slow, hesitant, slid barely over mine. Not a grip, just contact. A test. I didn't pull away, and she didn't let go. I thought about kissing you just now, I said. The words were out before I could catch them. She froze, her hand half-curled near mine. Her lips parted slightly, but not in surprise. More like something she'd already been bracing for. I should have lied. Should have backtracked. Laughed it off, said I was joking. But I didn't. Couldn't. Eleanor leaned back slowly, but her eyes didn't leave mine. She looked at me like she was trying to decide if I was dangerous. Or if she was. You don't mean that, she said, voice low. I do. Her breath hitched. She stood then, abrupt, like the couch had caught fire beneath her, pacing a short, tight circle in the middle of the room. Her arms crossed, one hand at her mouth like she could push the words back inside. You're 24. I know. You don't get it, she said, spinning toward me now. You think this is some slow-burn movie moment, but this, she gestured between us, frantic. This is real, and messy, and I've lived enough to know how those stories end. She was unraveling, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. I'm not asking for a story, I said. I'm standing here, with you. Isn't that real enough? She didn't answer right away, just stared at me like no one had ever said that to her before. And maybe no one had. I lost things, she said quietly. Time. Myself. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I sure as hell don't know what it means to be wanted by someone who still has everything ahead of him. You're not something I'm trying on, I said. You think this is about your age? She blinked hard. Once. I think, she said slowly, I want it to be about anything but you and me in this room right now. A beat. She moved toward the window. Rain had started, soft, uneven taps against the glass. Her back was to me, and I hated that I couldn't see her face. Eleanor, I said, stepping closer. Do you want me to leave? She didn't turn, didn't speak. My chest tightened. I'll go, I said, if that's what you want. Her shoulders dropped just slightly, like letting go of something she'd been gripping too tightly. Then, no, she whispered. She turned, slowly, her face unreadable. But her eyes, God, her eyes. I don't want you to leave. The words settled between us, heavy as thunder. We stood like that, close but not touching, the storm creeping louder behind the glass, both of us too still. Her eyes scanned mine. Her voice, when it came again, was barely audible. Do you want me? I stared at her, that question echoing. Do you want me? And just as I was about to answer, her eyes flicked to something behind me. Her face went still. I turned. There, just inside the doorway, was him. I didn't know who he was, only that he held a key. Early 30s, tall, confident in that arrogant way people are when they assume they still belong somewhere. He looked at me, then at Eleanor, then down at our hands. We hadn't even noticed they were touching. Jesus, the man said. Seriously. Eleanor stepped back, voice low. You shouldn't be here, Luke. He let out a bitter laugh. Neither should he. I stood frozen. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who I was in that room anymore. I'm not here for you, she said to him. Not anymore. Luke scoffed, stepping inside like he still had the right. You disappear for months, won't answer texts, and now I find you playing house with someone who still uses a student discount? Luke, stop, she warned, quiet, but sharp. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't just an ex. He was recent, maybe still in the picture. Maybe he thought she was still his. My chest went cold. I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were wide, like someone cornered, but not guilty, not exactly. I spoke before I could think. Was he the one you left? She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than anything. Luke laughed again, this time more to himself. This is so like you. Run from intimacy, find a new project. Does he even know who you were before all this? Something in her cracked then. Not anger, hurt. I was trying to start over, she said, barely above a whisper. I wasn't trying to seduce anyone. Could have fooled me, he muttered, staring me down. And suddenly I hated how young I must have looked. How easy it was for him to make me feel small. But then Eleanor turned to me, hands trembling, voice breaking. I didn't plan this. I didn't even want this at first. But then you kept showing up, and you weren't like him, and I started to. She stopped. My voice felt tight in my throat. You started to what? She looked at me like the truth might ruin us both. I started to feel like myself again. And there it was. Not lust. Not fantasy. Recognition. But the room had already changed. The door was open. Luke was still standing there. And I was shaking in the space between past and present. I need to go, I said, stepping back. Her eyes went wide. Jamie, I just need space. Okay. I didn't finish the sentence, because her voice broke through again. Soft, hoarse. Then tell me this isn't real. I stopped at the door, and I couldn't. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I lay in bed, lights off, eyes wide, trying to replay every second of what happened in Eleanor's apartment. The touch of her hand, her voice asking if I wanted her, the look on her face when I left, and that question. Then tell me this isn't real. I hadn't answered, because I didn't know how. It would have been easier if I could hate her, if Luke was some villain or if I'd walked in on a lie. But he wasn't, and she didn't lie. She just hadn't figured out how to stop needing people who hurt her. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. By morning, I felt sick with the weight of everything I hadn't said. So I went back, not with flowers or some speech, just my heartbeat in my ears and a dull ache in my chest. When she opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept either. Hair pulled back hastily, bare face, one slipper on, the other missing. She blinked like she wasn't sure if I was real. I didn't expect. I know, I said. Can I come in? She stepped aside, wordless. Same apartment, same cold air, same teacup still sitting on the table like time hadn't moved since I left. She didn't sit. Neither did I. I need to say something, I started, already regretting how shaky I sounded. And you don't have to say anything back. I just can't carry it around anymore. She nodded once, but her arms folded in, defensive, bracing. I was scared, I said. Not of you, of this, of how real it felt, how fast it became. More than I thought I was ready for. She didn't look away, but her jaw clenched. And I didn't know what it meant that I was falling for someone who wasn't supposed to be in my story. Her eyes flickered, pain maybe, or hope, couldn't tell which. But I think, I said, my voice breaking a little, you were the first person who ever actually saw me, like not just looked, saw. And once someone does that, you can't pretend it didn't happen. She was crying before she realized it. One tear, then another. You left, she whispered. I thought that was it. I thought so too, I said. But this doesn't feel finished. Silence. She stepped forward, hesitant, slow, like testing the floor beneath her. Then she touched my face with one hand, barely there. I was never asking you to fix me, she said. I just didn't know someone could meet me where I was, without asking me to shrink. I leaned into her palm. You don't shrink, I murmured. You just hide. And then finally, she let herself fall into me. No dramatics, no perfect kiss, just her forehead against my chest, her fingers curling in the fabric of my shirt. We stayed like that, long enough for the moment to settle. And when she pulled back, eyes searching mine, she asked the only question that mattered. Are you staying this time? It's been 4 months since that night. I still live next door. But now I don't knock. I have a key. We never sat down and mapped it out. We didn't call it a relationship right away. There were no declarations, no dramatic speeches. Just mornings where she'd hand me coffee before I could ask, and nights where she'd fall asleep on my chest like she'd been tired for years. That first week was the hardest. We kept circling each other like we didn't quite believe it yet. She'd flinch when I reached for her hand, and I'd second-guess every word that came out of my mouth. But slowly it softened. Luke didn't come back. He sent one angry message, which she didn't answer. She let the silence speak for her. We never talked about him again. What changed wasn't some big moment. It was smaller than that. One Sunday, she came into my apartment, barefoot, carrying a book she'd marked with little yellow tabs. She sat on my couch and started reading it aloud. No context, no warning. Like she didn't need to explain anything anymore. That's when I realized she'd stopped hiding. And me? I stopped waiting to be enough. I stopped feeling like I had to prove I wasn't just young, or temporary, or naive. I still mess up. I still feel out of my depth sometimes. But she meets me there, in the mess, in the middle. She still says wild things sometimes. Last week, as we were brushing our teeth, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "I think I started grieving who I used to be, but now I think I've found a better version of her." I didn't say anything back. I just kissed her foam-covered shoulder and spat into the sink. Because sometimes, loving her means knowing when silence holds more than words. She doesn't say I make her feel young anymore. That's not what it is. She says I make her feel alive. And I do. But what she doesn't know is, she did that for me first. Before Eleanor, I thought love had to be loud to matter. That it had to sweep in and change your whole life. But sometimes it just fits. It grows in the quiet, in the unexpected. And sometimes it starts with a broken sink and a cup of tea you didn't ask for. If you're still here, thank you for listening to this story. Did you enjoy it? Would you like more slow-burn romances like this? Or something even messier, more complicated? Maybe the next one starts with a letter that never got sent, or a voice message that wasn't meant to be heard. Tell me, what kind of story should we tell next?